Welcome to Drive the Daf, clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Rosh Hashana Daf Tesvav continues the Gemara's discussion about when the year changes from one year to the next as far as the halachos of fruits of a tree. There are a number of halachos that are relevant to which year a crop of fruits is said to have belonged to, such as Shemitah, Meiser. The Gemara has already determined that it is Shvat. It's Tu B'Shvat according to Beis Hillel. The Gemara is going to start with two quick questions and answers as to how exactly we identify Shvat. Then the Gemara is going to get into a lengthy discussion about esrog, which we've seen is a question as to which stage of the esrog's growth determines which year it belongs to. The Gemara is going to end up discussing esrog that goes from the 6th year to the 7th year and the 7th year to the 8th year. And the Gemara will have four different opinions: a brisa, which does not fit with some opinions, how you resolve the brisa to fit with those opinions, and then the Gemara will move on to discuss some other kinds of fruits which may have a different halacha than the standard fruits. They may not use the same milestone in their growth. So let's begin the Gemara. First of all, we've said that Shvat, Tu B'Shvat, 15th of Shvat is the key Rosh Hashana. It's when the year changes from one year to the next. So the Gemara says, which Shvat are you referring to? The Gemara has two quick questions here. First of all, Rav Yochanan asks, when we say Shvat, what do we mean? Do we mean the Jewish month of Shvat? Or do we mean the season of Shvat? That is 30 days into the winter. Shvat is generally the second month of the winter, but maybe we don't mean the month of Shvat. Maybe we mean the second month in the winter, which would be, let's say, from January 21st through February 20th or so. So the Gemara says, no, we mean the Jewish month of Shvat. We do not mean the season of Shvat, even though fruits generally comply with the season, but here we actually refer to the month of Shvat. Next, the Gemara says, what if we're talking about a leap year? Now, in a leap year, do we switch Shvat to Adar? Because Shvat is the middle month of the winter. So you have Teves, Shvat, and Adar. So is it because it's the second month that it's the significant month of tree growth? Or is it because it's the second to last month? In which case, if you have a 4-month winter, such as you have during the leap year, you have Teves, Shvat, Adar, Aleph, and Adar Beis. So maybe the Rosh Hashanah would be an Adar Beis, not an Adar Aleph. Somewhere says, no, it's still regular Shvat, still an Adar Aleph. Okay, now the Gemara goes to the question of an esrog. Because esrog we have seen in some ways is viewed as the halachas of a vegetable. Most fruits, their milestone for growth is when they begin to appear, when the blossom falls off and the fruit begins to appear. Esrog may be like vegetables in that its milestone is when it is actually picked off the tree. It's similar to vegetables in the way that it needs to be watered up until the end. So the Gemara has this question as to, in esrog, is it determined by the year that the fruit first appeared, or does it belong to the year in which it was picked off the tree? So the Gemara discusses what happens if it was first the fruit appeared. It did what's called chanata in the 6th year of Shemitah, but it wasn't picked until the 7th year. Does that have the halacha of a 6th year fruit or a 7th year fruit? Is it a regular year fruit or is it a Shemitah fruit? And what happens if it's the other end of Shemitah? If it was the fruit first appeared, it did chanata in Shemitah year, but it wasn't picked off the tree until the 8th year. Does that have a din of the Shemitah fruit or an 8th year fruit, which is not a Shemitah fruit? Now, there is a number of halachos that are relevant to this. First of all, does it have the Yisurim of Shemitah? If it's considered a Shemitah fruit, you can't work it, you can't collect it. There are all kinds of Yisurim that apply to Shemitah. Second of all, is it chayiv in Meiser? Generally, the halacha is as follows. All 6 years, besides for Shemitah, fruits are chayiv in Meiser. Shemitah fruits are not chayiv in Meiser for the simple reason that they're hefker. So this would seem to be linked to the other halacha. If it has the Yisurim of Shemitah, it should be pater from Meiser. It should not have the obligations of Meiser because it's hefker. The Gemara is going to show that it's possible that it's pater from Meiser, even if it does not have the Yisurim of Shemitah, at least according to one opinion. And the last question is beer. The halacha is that fruits which are Shemitah fruits, 7th year fruits, you have to take them out of the house when they're no longer available to the animals in the field. You have to take them out and be mafker them. That's an obligation called beer. So you have to know if it's a Shemitah fruit or if it's not a Shemitah fruit as to whether it's chayav in beer or not. So the Gemara is going to discuss these two cases, 6th year going to 7th year or 7th year going to the 8th year. The Gemara is going to discuss, first of all, machlokes between Rabbah and Rav Hamnuna. So Rabbah comes first. And Rabbah says the halacha is as follows. If it's 6th year going to the 7th year, so then as far as it being hefker, you want to know if it's hefker or not, you want to know if it's chayiv in meiser? The answer is it's not chayiv in meiser, it's hefker. However, it's also not chayiv in biur. Now, being not chayiv in meiser sounds like it is a shemitah fruit, which means it goes by when it's picked. Remember, the question here is a esrog which appeared on the tree, it first started growing during the 6th year, and then it was picked off during the shemitah year, during the 7th year. So if you're telling me that it's not chayiv in meiser, that means that it's considered a shemitah fruit. It goes by when it's picked. On the other hand, you're telling me that it is not chayiv in biur, which means that it's an 8th year fruit, and it goes by when it's a 6th year fruit, and it goes by when it was actually began to emerge from the tree. So we're going to have to figure that out. The next halacha that Rabbah says is that if it's a 7th to 8th year fruit, then it is chayiv in Shemitah. It has all the isurim of Shemitah. It's not chayiv in Meiser, and it is chayiv in biur, which means that it goes by when it is first appears on the tree, and it's considered to be a Shemitah fruit in all its halachos. So now the Gemara says, let's analyze this one at a time. You see from the 7th year to 8th year that Rabbah is considering it to be a Shemitah fruit. That means he holds that it goes by when it appears on the tree. Since it appeared on the tree during Shemitah, it is a Shemitah fruit. Now, then how would I understand why he says that it's not chayiv in Meiser when it's 6th year to 7th year? That would seem to indicate that it goes by when you pick it. So the Gemara wants to say, I can understand it, because I can tell you that the pshat is that we really don't know which one it is. They're going to chumrah both ways. So we're considering it to be a shemitah fruit both ways. And then I would understand that even though it's 6th year to 7th year, there we'll assume that it's a shemitah fruit because it's picked in the shemitah year. And when it's 7th year to 8th year, we'll assume it's a shemitah fruit because it first appeared on the tree during the shemitah year. The problem is then, when it's 6th to 7th year, why is it pater from beer? We should go with l'chumrah there also. We should rule stranger, then we should say that it's chayiv in biur. And if you're telling me that we are confident that we follow when it emerges on the tree, and therefore a 7th to 8th year it's a shemitah fruit, 6th year to 7th year it's not a shemitah fruit because it appears on the tree. So then why, when you're discussing 6th to 7th year, do you say that it is pater from Meiser, which makes it sound like it's a shemitah fruit and should have all the isurim of shemitah? It should be considered to be a 6th year fruit. So the Gemara answers, and then the Gemara says that Rabbah holds that he's not trying to go l'chumrah. He holds you always follow the time that it first appears on the tree. 7th to 8th year, it's a shemitah fruit for all its halachos. 6th to 7th year, it's a 6th year fruit for all its halachos. And therefore it does not have any isurim of shemitah, it's not hefker, and it is not chayiv in biur. Why then does he say that it's not chayiv in meiser? So Gemara says there's a different problem over here. This esrog is going to be sitting on the tree on Shemitah. And during Shemitah, everybody runs into the fields and grabs whatever fruits they want. They're going to grab these esrogim also. You're not going to be able to maintain control of these esrogim, even though they're not hefker. They're going to practically end up being as if they're hefker. People are just going to walk off with them. Therefore, I can't tell you to be chayiv in meiser. You can't be chayiv in meiser, even though it doesn't have an actual din hefker. It has a mitzias of hefker, and therefore you cannot be considered to be chayiv in meiser, practically speaking. Now, that's Rabbah's opinion. Now, the Gemara says Rav Hamnuna holds very similarly. He holds that you always follow the year in which it emerges on the tree. 6th year to 7th year, it's always going to be considered to be a 6th year fruit, and it's not a shemitah fruit. And therefore, it'll not be chayiv in biur, and it'll not have the isurim of shemitah. And the difference here is that, unlike Rabbah, he says, and it is chayiv in meiser. You don't say that, well, since people are going to walk off with it, it's pater meiser. It's chayiv in meiser. Now, if it's 7th year to 8th year, it's a shemitah fruit for all its halachos. Okay, so therefore, the only machlokes between Rabbah and Rav Hamnuna is, do we say that the fact that people are going to treat it as hefker takes off the obligation to take meiser from it? But they all agree that esrogim follow the time that they emerge from the tree as far as all their halachos. So Gemara says that there's a brisa that doesn't hold that way. The brisa of Rav Shimon ben Yehuda, who says a different halacha. Rav Shimon ben Yehuda, quoting Rav Shimon the Tana, says as follows. He says, an interesting halacha. He says that in all these cases, whether it's a fruit that it emerged in the tree during the 6th year, and it was picked in the 7th year, or it emerged in the 7th year and picked in the 8th year, either case, it's not chayiv in meiser, and it's not chayiv in biur. His explanation is that if any part of it happened during the Shemitah year, it does not have the obligation of Meiser. And if any part of it happened outside the Shemitah year, it does not have the obligation of beer. You get out of all the halachos of either part. If whether the emergence on the tree or the picking, if any part of that happened in the time that is lenient, that has no chiyuv, you're not chayiv in it. What's the reason? So he says as follows. The Gemara explains as follows. As far as chiyuv meiser, he holds like Rabbah. And therefore he says, if it actually emerged on the tree during the 7th year, you're not going to have a chiyuv meiser, because it's Shemitah deraisa, it's really chayiv and Shemitah, it's really hefker. If it was picked off the tree during the 7th year, if its time of picking was during the 7th year, then people are going to treat it as hefker, because when it comes ripe on the tree, they're walking around grabbing all the other fruits, so it's going to be hefker. So either way, it's hefker. And therefore, if it's hefker, it doesn't have chiyuv meiser. That's as far as that. He holds like Rabbah. Now, it's a kasha on Rav Hamnuna as far as halacha is concerned. Now, as far as beer, he has a special limud from the pasuk describing beer, which the Gemara doesn't quote. Where it's quoted in Rashi, but he's a special limud that beer doesn't happen unless the chanata, the emergence of the fruit on the tree, and the picking of the tree both happen during Shemitah. Now, so the Gemara says, so this is not going to fit with either opinion. It's not going to fit with Rabbah or Rav Hamnuna. Rabbah and Rav Hamnuna both say it only depends on when it emerges on the tree as far as beer is concerned. If it emerges on the tree during Shemitah, it's chayav in beer. If it emerges on the tree before or after, it's pater. So how is he going to fit with that? So the Gemara says they won't fit with this Tana. It'll be a problem on him. However, there's a Machokas Tanaim on the topic, and they'll hold like the other Tana on the subject. Where do you see a Machokas Tanaim? So the Gemara quotes a statement of Rav Yosi, quoting the Tana of Tulmus, saying in the name of 5 Zikanim, that there is a Machokas between this of Tulmus and Rabbanan in Usha. What is the halacha of when do we follow, of which part, which stage of growth determines the halachos of Shemitah, as far as the obligations of beer are concerned, and the obligations of which Meiser year are concerned. So they say as follows. Both of Thomas and Usha agree, the Chachamim and Usha agree, as far as which Meiser year you're in, you follow the time of when it's picked off the tree, for an esrog, that is. Now here we're not talking Shemitah. We're talking, is it a 2nd year fruit or a 3rd year fruit? Can you take Meiser from these fruits on fruits of other fruits that grew later? Or do you have to give Meiser Ani? Or do you have to give Meiser Sheni? All these halachas follow when it's picked off the tree. Of Thomas and Usha agree with that. As far as Shemitah, which means the halachos of beer, as well as other halachos there, Av Thomas says that it follows the time that it emerges on the tree, and Usha says it follows the time that it's picked off the tree. Now, the Gemara had some discussion to figure out exactly how we see this machokas, because Av Thomas didn't say his halacha in the case of Shemitah. He just said that the people in Usha argued, and the Gemara said, well, if they argue, they must be arguing on somebody, and we have to change the text. So that's how he figured out that there's such an opinion exists. But either way, that opinion exists, and therefore Av Thomas will be the one who holds that the halacha of beer follows the time when the esrog emerges on the tree, and Rabban and Hamnuna will hold like that opinion. All right, now we have a 4th opinion of an Amora. What happens when a esrog appears on the tree? It does chanata in the 6th year, and it's not picked till the 7th year. As Rav Yochanan, and Rav Yochanan says it's chayav in meiser, and it's pater on beer, which means that it is completely following the chanata. It follows when it emerges on the tree. Since it happened in the 6th year, even though it was picked in the 7th year, it has all the halachos of a non-Shemitah fruit. The Gemara says that Ravin says the name of Rav Yochanan, even if just a little bit grew, even if just a kezayis grew, if it's still considered to be a 6th year fruit, and if it grew into a gigantic fruit on Shemitah, but you didn't take Meiser, it's still chayav in Meiser because it's a 6th year fruit, and you'll violate the Isra of Tevel if you don't eat it, if you eat it without taking Meiser. Okay, now the Gemara moves on to discuss other types of trees and fruits. The Gemara quotes a Brisa, and the Brisa says as follows. If you have a tree that its fruits begin to appear before Tu B'Shvat, then it follows the preceding year, that year. If its fruits appear after Tu B'Shvat, then you take Meiser based on the next year. All the halachos follow the next year. Like we said, up to now, everything follows Tu B'Shvat. And the Gemara quotes now Rabbi Nechemia, who says not so fast. Rabbi Nechemia says that's only the type of fruit that you can't follow when you pick it off the tree because it's picked at many different times. Its picking season ranges. The Gemara has a step or two to identify how Rabbi Nechemia said this. First, he says that it has 2 crops. And the word he uses is the word we use by chickens laying eggs, that they have 2 clutches. So Gemara says it can't mean 2 clutches, can't mean 2 crops. What it means is that it's like 2 crops, that you have a lot of different times in which the fruits become ready over a long period of time. So you can't define it by when you pick it off the tree. You got to define it by when the fruit first appears on the tree. However, says Rav Nechemia, if you have a type of fruit that the entire tree gets ripened once, and the examples he gives are dikolim, which are date trees, and olive trees, and charuvin, carob trees, so trees like that, you will not follow when it emerges on the tree. You will say that its halacha is determined by when it is ready to be picked off the tree and when it's actually picked off the tree. Okay, so that's a special halacha there. So now the Gemara says, Rav Yochanan says that the minig of the people follow halachically about charuvin, they follow Rav Nechemia, and you won't go by when it emerges on the tree, you'll go by when it's picked. So the Gemara says, Rish Lakish had a kasha. He said, what do you mean? We have a statement, we have a brisa. It says that the tree called Benos Shuach, its Shemitah fruits last all the way into the 2nd year of the Shemitah cycle. Not only the 7th year, not only the 8th year, the 9th year, 2 years later, is still Shemitah fruits. How does that make sense? The only way it makes sense is because fruits which appear during Shemitah are still hanging around, even maybe on the tree still, 2 years later. So that means what's happening? That means that for these fruits, we're following when they first appeared on the tree. We're giving it the halach of Shemitah, even though they're not picked off until much after Shemitah. So you see that your psak like Rav Nechemia is wrong. You're telling me that we paskin it goes by when it's picked in these fruits. It's not true. We still call these Shemitah fruits because they first appeared on the tree during Shemitah. So Gemara says Rav Yochanan was quiet. He didn't answer. And the Gemara is surprised that he didn't answer. The Gemara says a lot of things he could have answered. Abba HaKoyin says to Rabbi Yossi HaKoyin, why didn't he answer him? He says, first of all, I told you, Rabbi Nechemia, you're telling me the Rabbanan. What does one have to do with the other? The Gemara says, what do you mean? You couldn't have answered that. He said the halacha is like Rabbi Nechemia. You can't paskin like Rabbi Nechemia against the Rabbanan. It's not sufficient to just say, well, I'm backed up by Rabbi Nechemia. He that would not have been a satisfactory answer if the Rabbanan were against how his psak was. Taisus points out that Rav Yochanan always holds like a stam mishnah, so he wouldn't have been able to say that anyway. So what do you mean? He could have answered a different answer. He could have said, I didn't say that the halacha is like Rav Nechemia. I said that the custom is like, that's what people are doing. People are doing like Rav Nechemia. But really that's not the halacha. The halacha is really like the chachamim. So Gemara says, no, you couldn't do that because the way he's saying it makes it sound like he's telling you that minig is acceptable. But if it's against the halacha, it wouldn't be acceptable. So Gemara says, well, why doesn't he say, I was talking about the halachos of Meiser. Which year is called the Meiser year? You're talking about Shemitah. Shemitah year, that's Doiraisa. Meiser and Chuvin is Derabanan. So Derabanan, we could go with the halacha of Nechemia. And the Shemitah was Doiraisa, we'd go with the halacha of the Chachamim. Someone says you already could have answered that, but so therefore, the Rabbi Abba HaKoyin said a different thing. He said as follows. He said, I'm surprised if Rish Lakish had an answer to Rabbi Yochanan or not. So Mer says, what do you mean you're surprised if Rish Lakish answered Rabbi Yochanan or not? You just told me that he had an answer. You just said he answered and he said that the Rabbanan don't hold. He says no. What he actually said was as follows. He said, "I'm surprised. I'm not sure if Rabbi Yochanan accepted what he said or not. When Rabbi Yochanan was quiet, I don't know if that means that he was quiet because he didn't have an answer and he accepted what Rish Lakish said, or if he was quiet because he didn't bother answering because he so roundly rejected it that he didn't even feel like answering it." Now, the Rabbi Chananel points out that there's another thing that the Gemara could have answered, that the fruit that Rish Lakish quoted the Chachamim was Benos Shuach. Benos Shuach is a type of a fig. Rabbi Yochanan was talking about Charuv. It's a different fruit altogether.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.